Good evening. Once again, this is a LuvSA through Bold Moves Radio. As promised, that today is going to be another beautiful edition of LuvSA, a program that we do through Bold Moves Radio, and we do that in an attempt to restore the love that our country expects of each one of us. And tonight, we have a special guest. I guess that when we listen to, I believe with no doubt at all that at the end of this show, somebody would have picked something that he or she can run with into the future, into building this country to become a country that we all hope to see it becoming. And I don't do this alone, as always. I do this with my co-host Moses Ngobeni, who will be joining us shortly. And the guest that we have is not a household name, I must say, but I think he's not a household name out of humility. He's so humble. He is such a guest that until you sit down with him, you will never get to know who he is. And that is what lacks from many people who, with achievements, would want to really go out, show themselves up. But this one, we have to go all out searching for him to bring the spotlight on him. And the guest that we have, it's my prayer, and prayer, it is his name. It is my prayer that he dishes out from his heart what he has for us this evening, that which will help us get wings to fly across the beautiful skies of the African continent. And his name is Prayer Rikoto. Mr. Rikoto, you're welcome to LuvSA through Bold Moves Radio.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute honor. And I'm glad to be part of the show today.
And I must say to our viewers that are joining us across the social media platforms, Facebook and YouTube, that this is record-breaking, the manner with which we secured his presence, because we only started speaking yesterday, and I'm still reeling from the shock, given the ease with which we secured his presence to be with us this evening. And that shows that it's somebody who will be speaking to you, who will be speaking to us through the passion that he has in what he is doing. What a man with humble beginnings. What a man with one of those genesis of his life that is typical of many of his age across South Africa, especially along racial lines, as a black young man that has gone through what one would not want to reflect on, but we have to reflect on, because it is out of those kind of experiences that we are able to forge our way ahead into getting to where our dreams are impatiently waiting for us. And Ngobeni, you want to say something to our viewers? You want to say something?
No, absolutely. A very unusual guest indeed, Kokwan Magoda, that we have tonight. But that prompts me to say the following, that the purpose of this show is not primarily driven by bringing to the attention of our viewers what they already know, but is to try and expose what they do not know. That's why we say we are bringing guests from all walks of life who are doing their very bit to give back to their communities, the way in which they demonstrate love for South Africa. And that is what this show, LuvSA, is all about. It's a patriotic one. So to our viewers tonight and listeners from all four corners of joining us live tonight, we thank you for joining us once again. My name is Moses Ngobeni here on Bold Moves Radio. The program is LuvSA. We're looking forward again to another promising session of this spectacular show, LuvSA. I'm actually looking forward to this. Unusual, but I'm excited, and it gives me so much joy to be hosting a man of his caliber.
I think we must just do some glossary as we kickstart the show, because I know from time to time you will throw that word kokwan, people will wonder what does Kokwani mean? I'll tell you why I say this, because we have got viewers and listeners not only across South Africa but across the globe. We've got viewers that are with us from the United Kingdom, and I'll tell you who those are. We've got viewers that are with us from the United States of America. So to accommodate all our viewers, strictly tonight we'll adhere to the Queen's language, that is the English language, as our medium through which will be coming to you live from or rather through a our Facebook page and YouTube. So for those that do not know what Kokwani is, Kokwani means a grandpa. It's a way of honoring somebody. I'm young as I look, definitely I am that young, but when my co-host, which is Moses Ngobeni, says Kokwani, it's a way of showing respect. We have got a way of doing things in showing respect towards each other as Africans. And so don't get lost. When each time it says Kokwani, just know that it's an honor it's a way of saying, with respect, Grandpa, I've got something to say, or I've got something to throw into the show following whatever somebody would have said in the show. Ngobeni, you want to say something special, perhaps in welcoming our guest? But I must say that perhaps before you say something, the guest that we have, let's look at the peak of his career. That is where he is presently. And I will immediately dive down to the toes of his career. That is where it all started and how it was like. The peak at which he is currently, he is reading for his PhD in economics. And when you go down to where it all started as a young man, as a child rather, he has a very unfortunate past, but I'm so happy to learn that despite the unfortunate past, growing up as a child in the dusty streets of one of the far-flung villages in South Africa, in the Limpopo province, he defied the odds that were staked heavily against him. Mr. Rikoto, I know it's a question that is thrown at you many a times. You are reading for your PhD currently, but when one looks down where you come from, what the genesis of a life that turned out exactly the opposite of what you have become and are swiftly becoming?
Once again, thanks, Mr. Magoda and Mr. Ngobeni, for having me here tonight. It's an absolute honor. And my journey basically is quite typical of what an average African young child would experience in their childhood. But I'm particularly privileged to see my life having turned out slightly different. So basically, the genesis of my journey is I grew up in a single-parent deaded household. It was 7 children. Number 6 of 7 were all raised by a single mother. And as part in growing up, it's not every day where we always knew where the next meal is going to come from, or when the sun sets, what are we going to eat going into bed, and that's that's reflective of the difficult circumstances that poverty will expose a child to. But I was fortunate in those earlier days to learn that not to take or not to own the circumstances that they were in as if that is my future or my fate. I learned pretty early to know that, look, I find myself in those difficult circumstances characterized by poverty, but that doesn't have to become my destiny. So in the early ages of my life, I devoted myself to learning and excelling in education, with a hope to one day, if God, the mercy and the grace of God is with me, one day I can overturn my fortunes and create a better future and a better living environment for the kids that will come after me and the generations subsequently after that. So that's in essence where my journey began.
All our
Mr. Manganyi.
I'm saying that what you have just said should trigger interest from our viewers across the country, across the globe, rather as we are enjoying audience across the globe. And I must say, just to give more idea to our viewers, that when he speaks of a poverty-stricken background under which he grew up, he's being very economic with words, because I think the best way to describe the circumstances under which he grew up would be to say that it was more of what those that know and appreciate the Queen's language better say, that it was a destitution-stricken family, because there was just no hope. He's waiting for his PhD in economics, as I've just indicated, but I must say that the part of his genesis saw him at some point, unfortunate as it is, at some point, so those circumstances saw him eating from the trash bins. Now, how do you reconcile such unfortunate beginnings and the peak at which he's shining from currently? But before we proceed to reconcile that through how he will take us through that journey, and I hope he will do it briefly, as we've got quite a few questions to throw at him. Let's just take a commercial break. When we come from that commercial break, Mr. Khoza, you'll reconcile the two, your extremes of poverty and success that you are characterized by today. That's how we come back from our commercial break. Mr. Khoza, I've already invited you to take our listeners through reconciling your extremes of life, the genesis of that, and the peak at which you are.
I think you are absolutely spot on and absolutely right, Mr. Manganyi, that the conditions of poverty were quite extreme in growing up, which resulted in me at the age of 12 or so. I left my village for the very first time, going into Johannesburg, so the city of gold, as they call it. But coming in here, the city of Johannesburg gave me a very different experience, which, for what it's worth, made me not to like the city at all. Because as a 12-year-old coming on here, I realized that life is more difficult this side than back in the rural areas. And what really made it so difficult was, at a time when I was here, my mom and my two siblings, my younger brother, my older brother, and my elder sister, for us to get bread on the table, we used to wake up early in the morning around 3-4 a.m., light up coal, just to go and roast corn and sell it in the central business district in Johannesburg. And that's how we basically getting our meal, and she was getting to pay for the rental for us to be staying this side. and we're just getting this corn from the farms that they're harvesting that. And that corn, after roasting it, I think at the time, I can't remember what the price was that was sold for, but it wasn't a lot of money. But after roasting the corn, when it dries up, that was going to be what the dinner that the items that she brings home for dinner while we are at this site here in Johannesburg. And first of all, a couple of weeks of doing that, we learn when we're sitting down at home at night, reconciling, calculating how much we've been able to make in the day. Realize that there's quite a lot of stock that goes into waste because that dry corn, that roasted corn, which is dried up, that we eat as our dinner, it's even not so friendly to your stomach. So we came up with a diversification strategy, and that strategy was to say, look, when my mom and my brother and my sister go into the CBD at 3, 4 a.m. to start selling corn that's roasted, I can go and stand by the robot, by the traffic lights, sell that corn that is raw, so that we don't have a lot of stock that gets wasted every night. So I was the one who was going into the robots, selling that corn to the motorist as the traffic lights, gets them to stop. I'll talk to them, sell to them. There'll be days where I'll go home with virtually nothing, and there'll be days when I can get the stock sold. And in a good day, they would make like a good 10, 15 rand. So this was back in the early 2000s. So that I'm sure one can easily establish that type of business model is not sustainable in the long run. So a couple of kilometers down the road from the robot where I used to sell the corn, there was what is called Devlin dumping site. So this is the place where the municipality, after collecting refuse in the cities and the urban areas, that refuse goes and gets dumped into that particular site. That site, bad and stinky as it is, it changed my experience about living in Johannesburg, and even till this day is one of the places that I appreciate the most, because that place ended up becoming a place where I get my meal every day, and I could start doing my first job as a 12-year-old at a time. And essentially what I was doing is that when these trucks go into that dumping site to dump all the garbage and the refuse that site, there were different stores in the yard there where if you go and collect the boxes and the empty cans, you collect them, you go and then sell them inside there. You can earn an income. So essentially, that immediately became a very good career upgrade for me, from somebody who was selling corn, roasted corn, on the traffic lights, making about maybe an average 15 or 30 rand per week, and to when I collect that refuse and then repackage it and sell it that side, I could make that within a day. There will be days when I would make like 100 rand. That was life changing, to see an amount of 200 rand in my life for the very first time. That was quite life changing. So that's the type of work we were doing, and then. And that ended up, everybody else, my brother and my sister and my mom ended up joining us in that. So it was almost operating as if it's some kind of a family business, But it was way more than that for us, because on top of us opening up those black refuse bags to just separate the garbage and the boxes and stuff so that we can go sell it to the recycling companies that were coming there, we realized that there's another gem in those plastic bags. There was leftover food that people were throwing away. That ended up becoming our lunch. When we get a bottle of Coke that is half full, we'll just collect them, put them into one big one. Then I know that for lunchtime and sorted. There will be leftover food that is there that's also thrown. We'll put it aside nicely. That becomes our lunch, And then on top of that, you have lunch when you go there. And then after you having lunch, you even go home with like 100 or 200 rand in a day. That was a hell lot of money. That was a lot of money that could, take us away too far. So that's how that place became so dear and amazing to us that ultimately all of us in the family ended up participating in that business. So that was quite a moment where I started loving that part. And then on top of that, I think a lot of people can see today, I'm here on the studio, I'm wearing a suit. But I must say that I learned to wear a suit for the very first time in my life with a shirt and a tie and pants that I picked up from those garbage bins that were thrown in that camping site that I took home. My mom washed and ironed it and gave it back to us. So myself and my siblings, we took we had a very good number of years where we actually wearing the clothes that were basically collected from there. So that's the level and the depth of destitution that one has had to deal with at an early age. But now, as we're talking right now, one can tell that I'm not as resentful of the circumstances that I've gone through. But now, what has essentially happened along the way is that that has worked. Earning the income from there was huge career upgrade for someone who was who was just earning 10 rand per week, and then getting a meal. Getting a meal from there was also just a huge socioeconomic upgrade for somebody who was just eating that corn that is dry after it was roasted and people didn't buy. So the transition from there to the dumping side was a huge career upgrade in every way, shape, or form. But there came one day that changed my life forever. As we were busy opening up those refuse bags and the like, I opened up one refuse bag and I saw a baby, a newborn baby, that was seemingly dumped. Perhaps it might have been one of those kids. By assumption, perhaps could be one of the kids that are victims of teenage pregnancy, and then the mother or the parents ended up deciding to throw that baby away. Unfortunately, when I saw that, that moment changed my life. Because as a 12-year-old, I didn't know what to do, but I still have emotional scars that are still hitting me out of that moment. But there's something remarkable happened in my life right at that moment. And this is essentially what happened, is that from that day, I walked away. And it took me years to break the silence and open up to my family as to the reason why I never showed up again, despite the amount of money that we're making there in our family business. Because I didn't even know what to say. But it's only now in the later stages of my life that I actually told them exactly what happened. So the story, the encounter with that newborn baby that was thrown has tortured me and made me realize that this life of hustling without having a clear pathway to get to exit this system of poverty that I am in, it's not working. So I've had to sit down and figure out there's got to be something better I can do with my life to create better prospects for better employment, better earning potential. And that is when I learned that I made a commitment to myself that I've been reading and I've read Nelson Mandela's speech at one point when he was saying that education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change your society, to change your society. And I made a vow to myself that I want to devote my life into this education and see if this cannot change my life. And I knew at that time that, you know what, there are many people who are talented, who are gifted, who have devoted themselves into education and working so hard, but they're not all getting the results. And I knew that, and that became my prayer as a 12-year-old, that Lord, and I pray that God help me open up the windows of opportunity for me, that through this channel and vehicle of education, take my life somewhere else, so that and then I'm gonna work so hard to attain whatever qualification that is required to get me there. And one day I'm going to stand up and become an advocate for one of those kids that I could not save as a 12-year-old, simply because I just didn't know how to, I didn't know what else to do. But in future, one thing I could possibly do.
Mr. Kozo, if you can hear me, if I can cut in, we will need to take a break. But before we take that break, I must say that your experiences at the dumping site reminds me of a man that I worked with at some stage. I think at the time I was working at State Attorney. I must acknowledge him of the lesson that he gave me at the time. And if he's listening, or if somebody knows him, is next to him, you can invite him to join us, because, he said to me the other day that, Mr. Manganyi, when you have finished eating your food and you have got some leftovers, you don't just throw the food into the bin, but wrap the food nicely in a way that if somebody picks that up from the bin, it is still healthy for that person and safe to eat. And I can just imagine, that if we did not have such people at the time when you were going into the dustbins or waste areas to help yourself from your meals that will constitute your meal for the entire day, where would you be today? But before we move into your later life, let's take this break as our listeners are digesting. And I must read something here as I acknowledge Rulani Baloyi. She says something here. She says, our experiences presents opportunities depending on our attitude. And she goes on to say, I'm challenged, Mr. Kozo. And this goes to say, or remind us of the popular saying that your attitude determines your altitude. Your altitude at which you are flying today, Mr. Kozo, is as a result of the attitude in responding to the circumstances that presented to you at the time. But more from you when we come back from the commercial side of the break.
Streaming 24/7.
24/7. Bold Moves Radio.
Bold Moves Radio.
Afrika nakupenda sana. Oh, Afrika nakupenda sana.
That's how we come back from our commercial break. Mr. Kozo, let me take you into your classrooms and try to attend to them as collectively as possible. That is both your lower level of schooling into your secondary or high school of furthering your studies, as we call it in South Africa. I say as we call it in South Africa because, as I said to you earlier on, that we have audience, we have got people, we have got viewers, we have got listeners that are also listening to us from across the globe. And among those that we know are listening to us, we have got the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation family from the United States of America, and we do have others that are doing so from the United Kingdom, and of course, many from walks, from all walks of life in the country South Africa, and of course, some from the rest of the continent, Africa. Now, Mr. Rikotso, the circumstances, if you can indicate to us and try to be as brief as you can, maybe I should indicate that if you can do that in a minute to two, that those circumstances, unfortunate as they were and remain for many that are still going under those similar circumstances, did they at any stage threaten your schooling further?
Absolutely. Absolutely, they did. As a matter of fact, this is the reason why, if you look at a lot of the people who grow up under the similar circumstances that I've been through, it's not so often that you see them going to the length and breadth that I've ended up at. Is because the weight and the chains of poverty, they really weigh you down, and they strip you of the right to be human and to belong to a society. So, and this is some of the experiences that I've even had at school, which have even caused me, lots of stress and frustration, and even as a young child, as a young student, and even if you look at in my high school or middle school, as they call it in other regions of the world, is that, look, when you're going to school, you see, it was a bit difficult because I finished my school. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it feels like to go to school with a pocket money. I've never had that. As a matter of fact, I don't know what it feels like to even have new clothes or new uniform every year, and which kind of obviously makes you feel like you actually don't belong when you have other kids that seem to be having it all together. And unfortunate part is that because as children, kids will always be kids, so you would have others who don't understand the socioeconomic circumstance that others are battling with, so you can easily become a laughing stock, and that can really work down your confidence and your self-esteem, and is part of the experience that I had. But I'm very thankful that in dealing with some, when I experienced all of this, I had some of my teachers who were very generous and who were very kind to actually recognize that, hey, you know what, this student is in a difficult set of circumstances. So they sometimes pull me aside, talk to me, and offer themselves to help me with advice, and also with just getting through some of the, sometimes even just getting through, just giving me some money just to buy something during the break, like any other kid. Because typically what we do is that when you go to school during the break, you go outside, you go to the tap and drink water. After that, you exit the school gate, go sit in the bush outside the school, and then some of us will just go sit there, pray. Some students will be studying that time. I would normally just sit down and be reading my Bible and be praying. After that, I go back to the tap, drink water, wash my mouth, and then put on a Vaseline, so that I look like another student. But and that was also still affecting me, my concentration levels when I need to be sitting in class on an empty stomach.
And Mr. Kotso, sorry, I have to jump in there. So far, and I must say, at one point, I even forgot that I'm the co-host there. I'm part of the viewers because of how you have narrated your experiences growing up to the point where you've taken us thus far. But I must indicate that you come from very humbling experiences. And there's a couple of people who are with us now, who've honored us with their presence. I recognize Candice Egan, who's super proud of you. I recognize Sinotolo, who is immensely proud of you. And after hearing such a story that you have narrated, there is no way one can remain hopeless, because it would actually encourage someone to take the word hopelessness out of their mind. And I want to bring to your attention this quote, Mr. Kotso, by G. Michael Hopf. It says, hard times create strong men, and strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And in as much as you cannot be your own fortune teller without the experiences that you've been through thus far, what do you think your life would have turned out? You've been exposed to money as a very young man, and we know what being exposed to money as a young man can do to one's future. What do you think when you try to look at it, when you try to reflect? What do you think your life would have turned out like?
Man, I think there's no, if you're looking at from the picture that you painted around my circumstance, I think there is no shortage of examples of how, how crazy or how untidy life can get if someone doesn't have some sense of discipline in handling money, and and they just go with the flow and are not decisive about what they want in their life and all of that stuff. So I think in the main, for me, that is essentially what has been the main difference maker, because I've taken my circumstances, looking at what I've gone through, I've sat down, reflected, and then in terms of, and then I've let the circumstances that I grew up in, I wanted anything else other than that. And I made a vow to myself that whatever it is that I need to do, I'm going to do it so that I can have a better life tomorrow. And part of that was I had those difficult circumstances that I've grown up in, and I saw at that point I have a golden opportunity to create easy times for those that are coming, because the difficulties that I've experienced, I've often said to people, adversity makes some men to break, but it makes some of us to break records. And I count myself amongst those who have broken the records through that adversity. And that did not come by accident or by coincidence. It was a reflection of a decisive, it was a decisive set of actions that I've taken. I've said to myself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to subject myself to whatever I need to go through to build a bridge from this poverty to a situation of abundance at a certain stage in my life. And part of that could not have done it without the help of all the people that have come along the journey with me, and that have come along the journey with me. And I'm particularly excited that you mentioned the likes of Candice Egan. Shout out to her. I call her my Mulungu mom. She has been very much part of the journey, and when I was at university up until now, she has played in such an immense role through the scholarship program that I was part of from the Michael and Susan Dow Foundation. And I think Mr. Manganyi did allude to that they are present here joining us today. So I appreciate my family from down in Austin, Texas, in the United States. I really appreciate it. So what that is that it took a decision from myself to say that, yes, I am where I am today, not by choice, but I have a choice in terms of where I want to get to tomorrow. And in doing that, I made a series of decisions, and then I worked my way to find myself in a place and in a company of those who are able to complement that vision and support that vision. And that's in a way that is what has marked has changed my trajectory and made me the success that I am today, because on my own I could not have done it. And even with just praying, I could not have done this. I've devoted my early days as a young man to church, serving in church, and doing everything I can, and to prayer as well. Shout out to Bishop Elijah Mtileni for taking me on board when it was not fashionable to do so, and a lot of people were questioning this decision, but he took a bet of faith on me, and I thank God that I did not disappoint him and many others who have taken a leap of faith and saw something great in me. So I just want to thank God for all these people and my family as well for standing with me and supporting me throughout the journey. So what am I saying in a sense is that for one to go through this journey, there are certain decisions that you need to make as an individual, where I want to go, where I need to be. And once you've done that, get yourself in the right company. Surround yourself with what I call destiny helpers. And for me, this transition to get to the pinnacle of my life where I am today, having seemingly achieved what for somebody of my age is a bit too high. I personally don't think I have done so much, but I acknowledge I acknowledge that recognition from everybody else and from yourself, Mr. Manganyi, but all of that, I could not have done it without the support system that I have around me and the people that have devoted themselves to walk the journey with me while we spread the message of hope and tell everybody else that if there is a child out there, be it here in South Africa or any part of the world anywhere, whose circumstances and situation looks like they are a hopeless case, I want to I want to present an alternative here and say, look at prayer records. Once a hopeless case, but today he's standing up and saying, you are not a hopeless case. You too can rise from the ashes and be whatever you want. Your dreams are valid. You belong to the society and you have a role to play.
And that is Mr. Rikoto, our guest tonight on our show, LuvSA through Bold Moves Radio. Mr. Rikoto, if I may ask you, your interest in pursuing a PhD in economics, could that be in any way be attributed to the circumstances under which you grew up, trying to understand the economics that could have been accounting for those circumstances? Any nexus between the two, your circumstances and the interest thereof?
Absolutely, Mr. Manganyi, it does. So this is the free economics 101 free lecture now. The discipline of economics essentially it solves the social problem of unlimited needs, and then limited supply of resources to meet those needs. And that reflects in all our lives in many ways. But more so in the field of economics, the focus is more on the money. And why am I saying this? I've had a very terrible relationship with money as a child growing up. And my relationship was one where money was not a good friend to me, obviously because of the circumstances that I've highlighted. So I have had to kind of transition so early in my life to learn how to make money, because I didn't have the privilege of getting someone to give it to me. So I wasn't handed anything in life, even as early as the age of 10. So when I get to the age of 12, I knew and understood what it takes to earn that 1 rand, to earn money. So it made me appreciate the value of 1 rand when I get it. And which also helped me to appreciate the value of 100 rand, 1,000, and million. So that transition on its own, so that already, that background has made me realize that when I have some small portion that is supplied to me today, I need to understand that out of that, I need to build a mechanism to create ways to replenish that supply. Because if I don't do that, if I don't replenish that supply, tomorrow I might go hungry, or I might end up going back to the trash bins to look for meals. So that on its own has allowed me to develop this attitude of gratitude for the little things that I've got, and work with the little I have to maximize and replenish that going forward. And obviously part of this was, it was things that, and I learned this even before I understood that there's a discipline called economics. I was learning this from the guidance and the mentorship I was getting from the people at church and the people at school and the like, where I learned that it allowed me to learn so very early in my life that if you eat tomorrow's bread today without replenishing supply, poverty or hunger will be patiently waiting for you in your future. So the one thing I did not want is to have another experience or encounter with poverty or hunger in my next future or in my experience the next day. So the discipline of economics helps me to, it's more in line with my personal drive and my passion to keep on, to learn ways to keep on replenishing the supply and maximize on the little resources that I have to create more and more abundance for the future generations.
Initial break, but before we do that, I would like us, or rather you, to reflect on this, so you can perhaps make a comment on it as we wrap up the show. There is something that one of our viewers has just brought to our attention now, or rather a comment, that if you take care of the little you have been entrusted with, you can surely be entrusted with more. And I want us to look at that in the context of all the experiences that you have narrated thus far. But more on that when we come back from this commercial break. And that is how we come back from the commercial break. The program is LuvSA on Bold Moves Radio. I'm Moses Ngobeni with my host, Ntembo Mangani. Our guest for tonight is Mr. Preya Rikotso, an investment banker and a PhD candidate in economics. Mr. Rikotso, you've narrated a story of humbling experiences. And my take on that personally is you've basically redefined a lot of things in life, and that there is no such a situation where one can say, I am hopeless. For as long as you take hold of the opportunities that have been presented before you and try to work your way around it, obviously with the help of people around you. If there is no one around you, you can look around to try and find some help. And this brings me to this point, which I wanted to ask earlier on before you can reflect on the comment that I mentioned. At that turning point in your life there at Devland dumping site, when you discovered that lifeless body of a baby in a refuse bag, I see that as a turning point on its own. But going into school or going on to school to pursue your studies and the experiences or rather exposures that you've had before, have you had any temptations or thoughts of dropping out of school? And at any point when those thoughts of dropping out came, how did you manage to overcome that?
No, absolutely. I've had a lot of those, and when we are sitting and trekking like this, it's something that's not written on my face, um, and that's a beautiful part of it. That when life knocks you down, just find a way to dust yourself up and get back up going again. So that is to say that I've had my experiences where when I get to I studied my undergraduate degree at the University of Cape Town. This is the first student from my school in Bayele to gain admission that side and graduate from there. So I initially started enrolling for actuarial science, and as you can, for those who know it, to get into that program, your results need to be quite good. So I went to the University of Cape Town with, very good results and some distinctions as well that allowed me to get into actuarial science class. But when I was busy there, I was handed my first failed script there, which I didn't really experience in my student life before. And that was quite difficult because it obviously forced me to reconsider whether I want to do this actuarial science and the stuff and the like. And many other failed student experiences at the time when I'm there. And obviously I felt like giving up and like whatever I've been told before that there is no hope for me. Maybe those people were right. It's those moments when you are knocked down, you realize that, all the negativity that has ever been spoken in your life comes back to weigh you down. So, but I was reeling and feeding off the positivity of the people who were around me, who were, helping me to see the light at the end of the tunnel and show me that and tell me that, hey, you know what, you can do something with your life. You are talented, you're gifted, and you are a young man who prays. You believe in God. God will help you out. So that went a long way to obviously, help me, and that's how I got back up and gain the strength, sustain the strength to be able to fight through and then keep going back to class and learn again. And obviously, what has helped in that case is that, I had to obviously devote myself to mentorship, seek help, go to people, ask a lot of questions. And ultimately, that's how I ended up, maneuvering through and then went back to my passing and excellent ways as a student. And then I eventually graduated.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Kotso.
Mr. Koto?
Yes, sir.
As we draw to an end of our show, and listen to me, please. Now I'm dictating. An element of dictatorship at times applies. We just don't condone it when it comes to governance that has come to become so common with some of our African states. But I think we are moving out of that. Now, let's be brief as much as possible, Now, cumulatively, your experiences growing up, getting there at school, going through everything that you went through, together with your achievements today as we speak from the peak of those successes, how is that together benefiting your community that you come from, South Africa as a country that you are a citizen of?
I think the first difference, the first benefit that accrues to everybody as a result of my experience, and I think it's part of it. The first one is that today we're sitting here having this conversation where I am telling the entire world that there is no hopeless case. There is hope for every child out there. You can do better. It's one message that I believe that had I received that in those days, it would have it would have altered my course and my trajectory along the way and made things a lot worse to know that there is actually somebody who believes in me, and there are other people who have gone through difficult circumstances in their lives, and they, like the phoenix, they rose from the ashes. And you didn't get a lot of those. It was a lot when you get motivated, you were motivated by those who care. It was all theoretical, but to know that there is somebody who has been through this journey and has came out, life is the way it is today. I think that's one of the biggest difference makers, and that should help to continue to fuel to fuel positivity out there and restore hope to those kids out there whom life has dealt them a difficult deck of cards. So that on its own, amongst many other things that I may be doing in my private space, like you alluded to, that a lot of what I end up doing, I want to keep it in the shadows. But the message itself, spreading the message of hope and making myself vulnerable to tell the world that you are not a hopeless case. There is something good that can come out of you. It's a very important. It's a very important benefit and contribution to the society. And this is a point. This is a moment as part of this program where I come. I take a step, and talk to everybody else. It would talk to everybody else that, hey, if today in your life you are in a position that is different or better than what you were yesterday, you have a good story to tell around you, because the world we live in today, even our country, is full of negativity. And the world doesn't need so much negativity. But that one person who has a good story, a positive story, let's tell that story so that it can inspire somebody else. Because and the reason that's important is because as we do this from the studio, and we do that behind the tree somewhere else, this is going to spread a message of hope and positivity around the country. Because and we need to take up that call, because all of us here, we have within us the ability to change the world, to tell our stories in a way that will uplift other people, give them hope, and give them a reason to believe in a better tomorrow.
Mr. Koto, as we absolutely come to an end of our program for this evening, telling us that, he is plumbed back to the community. He is contributing. He is contributing by making sure that he shares his story with those that are similarly or worse placed as he was, or compared to the circumstances that presented themselves to him at the time. Achinyo Achebe, one of our greatest stars in literature from the north of our continent, says that if a child washes his hands, he can eat with adults, despite the circumstances under which somebody might be in there today, going through that with hope almost zero. A story of Mr. Koto should be an inspiration to give you wings to fly across the beautiful skies of the world. And I must also acknowledge my late teacher in English from Ghana, and may his soul continue to rest in peace, Mr. K. Mensa, who once said that it is not a question of where you are, but whoever you are, wherever you are. And Mr. Kozo turned out to be that whoever he was, wherever he was, and he did not give in to the circumstances that were aimed at frustrating his dreams. And that is how we come to an end of our show for tonight. But Mr. Kozo, as we close the show, one thing, in strictly less than 30 seconds before we give Mr. Ngobeni a chance, that which you feel this show will not have been properly concluded without you having been given an opportunity to say, what will that be in less than 30 seconds?
So is to thank everybody from my family and all the strangers that I've met along the way. We have become friends, family. Particular shout out to my mom, who has taught me to believe in myself at a very young age. Shout out also to my wife and my kids, who are making that sacrifice for me to be able to say I'm in PhD candidate right now. It's a massive sacrifice that they're making to support my dream. So I want to thank everybody else. They are the incredible destiny partners in my life. So, and I could not do any of this without them. So I just want to say thanks everyone. Thanks to everyone that I may not have mentioned you by name, but I just wanted to know that I deeply thank you, and I'm humbled by the level of support and love that you show me. So thank you very much to everybody.
To me, it's your wife, and here's your pillar of strength.
A beautiful story of hope than to echo the words of Mr. Rikotso himself, having said, hopeless, there is no hopeless case. And we've heard that clearly. We may not be able to match the kind of guest that we had tonight, but we encourage our viewers to continue to be glued to their screen every Thursday evening at 6 o'clock and be with us to get more as we dish out from wonderful guests that we continuously have on the show. I came in just when Mr. Manganyi was about to bring Mr. Rikotso's companion to the screen. Let me give them a chance.
Mr. Rikotso, just a word that you may want to say to your better half in appreciation of what he is doing, especially the contribution he's making to the world. Like being with us is an immense contribution that will leave a footprint for those that will come after us when they look at this or watch this or listen to this one day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manganyi, for the opportunity. So unlike him, I am a woman of few words. So I think we complement each other so well. Imagine if all of us could talk and talk, meaning that there was not going to be a home to build. But just on my side to say, I am very proud of my husband and the achievements that he has achieved in life. And to say in whatever he achieves and whatever good things comes out, he never leaves me behind. So for that, I am grateful for.
That's how we come to an end to today's show. LuvSA through Bold Moves Radio. It's a patriotic movement that we cannot do alone. We do it together as we continue to build our country, as we continue to restore the love that somehow has been lost towards building this country. And what sharing you have just had with us and our listeners and viewers across the globe, Mr. Rikotso. And from us at Centurion, where we are broadcasting live from together with my co-host, Ms. Moses Ngobeni, in our language, when we appreciate somebody, we will say Chandla, Chandla. But belated as it is, Mr. Rikotso, we want to say, which means congrats for your achievements. We want to say Ria, and we invite the world else to conclude by saying, let's say Ria to Mr. Rikotso. That is how we come to an end to this edition. And same time next week, let's join each other as we continue to build South Africa.
Streaming 24/7. 24/7.
Bold Moves Radio.
Bold Moves Radio.
Afrika, nakupenda sana. Oh, Afrika, nakupenda sana.